Hey, what's up guys? Limacon here. I want to take a run through of my new mix called Burn Me Like Cedar. 81 tracks, 69 minutes, this thing's a beast. Took me a while to put together, and conceptually I wanted to take a certain number of polyrhythms and just kind of different types of rhythms, mixing them together. I've always liked music that cycles quickly, that goes from one thing to another, that keeps my interest, especially when it comes to listening. You know, because on the dance floor you can get away with letting it go 32 measures and just chug it out. But when you're listening, you need to keep the interest, and I just find that's the most, I can chew on that the best. So I ran quite the gamut as far as tempos in this. It went from, you know, we'll take a look at the full mix here. Tempos range from 90 up to 120, up to 140, and then 143 to 160, and then ultimately ending at 178, you know, 180. So we've gone the full spectrum, 90 beats per minute to 180 beats per minute. And you know, if you're gonna do one like this, you're gonna start out, I don't recommend doing something that's this is broad as far as your tempos are concerned. When I first started, I would, you know, start down at like 110 and build up to like 125 or something, or, you know, 120 to 135 if you're doing faster techno. But what I like about this is just the range of genres that you get into, and even for me personally, it forces me to listen to more things than just my specific, like my sound or whatever that bullshit is. So I'm looking at hip hop, I'm looking at drum and bass. You start listening to these certain tempos and you're not thinking of, oh, well, this isn't my tempo, this isn't stuff I could play on the dance floor. This is awesome music, right? So let me show you my library and kind of how I build it out. I start just dumping everything into live. So, you know, I got drum bass, I got 80 to 90 beat per minute crunks. I just start separating it out per tempo, and then also roughly for genre. So I can, when I start to go grab stuff, I can know a little bit of at least what I'm grabbing towards. Because there's a lot of that, believe me. So we got some 120 to 130 stepping, we got some 130 to 140 breaks, some chills, some ambient textures. You know, just different tools that you can mix on top of other stuff. It's important to separate those out, things that are legitimate tracks that you're like, this is an awesome, unique sound that I want to weave in, or am I pulling from tools, either percussive or vocal or melodic tools, right? Because sometimes something is just too percussive and you need a little melody over the top. So this is where I actually compile a mix, and as you can see, each audio track has you know, its own song specified to it, so that I can have specific filters or effects for that particular track. I don't have to weave it in and out with envelopes and stuff. So if there's a particular loop that maybe I want to use a couple of different parts of, you know, here I got this little section, and then that little section, and then the whole thing. So I can start cutting up tracks to say, okay, well, maybe this is the percussive part that I want to use from this, or this is the melodic part that I want to use from this, or even just transitions. I do that a little bit. I mostly just, when I start laying it out, I'll start cutting it up if it's too long, and, you know, cut it and smash it. So let me dive into the mix, because that can be a little bit more descriptive on how this thing's actually put together. This is actually a cool part where mode selector comes in. You know, we got a little percussive there. And then coming in, we got French vocal, and then some funk backing it up. So this is actually a dope track. And I was going to just let it play on its own, but I found this super cool funky track that goes along with it. So sometimes it's like that, of just trying to find bookends for unique tracks that I want to drop in, and sometimes that's usually how it is. I usually don't take tools and like just start mashing them together and be like, oh, what can we create? It's usually centered around a particular focus, like how do I get these two tracks to come together, or these groups of tracks, or how do I bridge a particular tempo? You know, there's a goal in mind. So moving on, this is an interesting section right here. We have Rodhad. Is that how you pronounce it? Rodhad? Rodhad? It's got some, it's like dark techno, but it's chuggy around like 113. It's super dope. And then putting a little dub on top of that. And instead of this dub, what I had is, I had Tigers and Woods coming in with a pretty ripping track, but it didn't quite make sense. I thought I was done, I thought it was great, and then every time it came up to that, it was just too banging. And for a listening mix, you know, I like some 4/4, I like a little techno, a little chugginess, definitely some funk in there, but I personally have to watch how much I really start banging for the listening experience. So that's what this is all about, right? When something starts, when something is changing enough, then it keeps that interest in your mind. So here we have this vocal sample coming in. And that's just a little hint of what we're then going to do later to try to bridge these two sections. Because that was the difficulty, is I was trying to bridge to this breakbeat that comes in. So here we have a little melodic, have some atmospherics, and then we have this breakbeat that's ultimately coming in. So there you have 5 tracks. That's nice. Doesn't sound like too much. But yeah, it's a nice transition from that 4/4 over into breakbeat. And I like giving a little bit of space in my mix too. You know, for dance floor mixes, it's like you know, don't let the beat go for too long. But in listening mixes, I like to change it up, have some space, have some breathing room. So here's another interesting one where Odessa did this track with Regina Spektor, and while the track itself hit me emotionally, I wasn't going to include the whole thing. But there's something about that vocal which was really nice to add some humanness to all these synths that we surround ourselves with. And so Clockwork and Locked Groove do this kind of hypnotic techno. So again, this vocal sample wasn't in the mix originally, and as I kept listening to it, after it's all done, I'll come back to it and start slicing and kind of pulling out pieces. Like I'll pull out like an entire 20 minutes and then slam it back together, because it was just chugging too much. It was just too much 4/4. It didn't change enough. Didn't have enough interest as far as the beat structures or the different genres that were blending together. It got up to 120 and it was just like chug, 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 chug. I'm like, okay, no, that's not what I want to do. And that's hard. It's hard when you've spent that much time and then you have to rip something apart and you're like, I spent so much time, no. You know, and so often mistakes are held onto just because of the effort that was put into, but it's not a mistake. Because if you realize that it's not right, you learn something from that. And that's part of the creative process. You build it up and you tear it down. And that is essential to create something fantastic. You know, this mix took a long time, but it's something special. And I hope it's something that people can listen to over and over again, that they can listen to years from now and still get a lot out of. They can start to dive into how the mix was put together and really get something out of it. So if you're going to create a mix, if you're going to produce, if you're going to do something, anything creative, take some time with it. Create something special. Don't be afraid to make mistakes and mix it up, tear it apart, and then build it back up again into something that's super fresh and exactly what you want. Okay. So there you get a take of so it's slightly coincidental is that I made this mix. I was been working on it for months, and I finally finished it, and that night the Santa Rosa fires broke out and thousands of people lost their homes, thousands of structures were burned. So I hesitated a little bit before I actually released this mix. And the only solace that I have, because the rebuild of the houses, the people who've lost their homes, their jobs, that takes a long time to rebuild. But nature bounces back from fire, and we're just a month later, we're seeing green grass growing where the ash is. It actually loves fire. And this is part of the creative process, right, of tearing things down and building up. And when you build up again, it's better than it was. There's pain. There is significant pain in ripping something apart. But in order to achieve success, in order to achieve that better place, you have to do it. Anyways, this is Limacon. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I hope you really enjoy it.